The damage I saw here was as severe as I've ever seen at any of the storms. Building per building, percentage-wise, I think this was as bad as anything I'd ever seen.
Our dad's house was totally destroyed. Our barn was totally destroyed. Every single thing that we need to farm with was destroyed, just broken apart, blown away, rained in.
I just can't believe what happened to our town. It was hard seeing. It felt like a war zone.
I was just thinking, what am I going to do for my family? What am I going to do for my parents? Am I strong enough to do this all on my own?
And I think people realized when they saw the devastation, how bad it was. You could just consider yourself so lucky if you were alive and you had your family alive, and if you just had a roof over your head. It's pretty amazing when you see people.
Every year for the last 8 years, we've always rented a suite at the Hooks and have an employee party. And that Wednesday night happened to be our night, and that was a big talk. Our employees, and at that time it was a tropical storm.
Honestly, the first thing that came to mind is, we're thinking rain, okay, much needed rain. In fact, we had a council meeting on Tuesday. We talked about it, and we said, well, we're going to have some rain, much needed rain. We're appreciative for the rain.
It seemed like it wasn't much when it started. In fact, we wrote the storm off. Towards the beginning of the week, we thought that the storm was going to dissipate and move on. And it quickly got real quick.
Yeah, there was a fear. I was certainly afraid of the storm. It was kind of surreal. It's something that we had always prepared for. For years, we've been out in the communities doing hurricane preparedness events for such an event. And it was becoming reality, and it happened in very short order. We'd seen it with Hurricane Celia back in 1970. We saw it with Hurricane Wilma in 2005. It went from tropical storm to major hurricane in 24 hours. And so Harvey did it in 40 hours. You always worry about rapid intensification because it doesn't give you as much time as you would like to prepare. And this storm really only gave us 48 hours from when it first began as a tropical storm to when it was pretty much making landfall.
So we jumped into action. We activated our emergency ops team for the city.
Thursday, we closed the restaurant down early. 3 o'clock, we let everybody go and start taking care of what they had to take care of.
When the mayor made his announcement, I believe it was around 11 o'clock to evacuate, a mandatory evacuation in the city. We followed procedures, got everybody out of our hotel rooms because it was still, last week of summer, it was still very busy out in Port Aransas.
So immediately I went home to help my parents out because my parents are disabled and we have some rental property out in Rockport.
Because July and August are so brutally hot, we tried to have the fewest animals as possible on the farm. So just in the natural flow of our farming, we didn't have that many animals. The animals that we did have, I put in the barn, I got them safe and secure, gave them food and water to last a few days, and then wished them the best.
I remember finally we got to go to our house and board up, and it was about 10 o'clock at night. And it was my daughter, my 16-year-old daughter, my son, 25-year-old son, my husband, and his best friend, Mark Jones. And his best friend wouldn't leave until we boarded up.
So we were going to go to the grocery store right after this, Friday morning. Facebook said the grocery stores were open till noon. 10 till 10, I go to one of the major grocery stores. They're on a microphone asking people to leave. The store is closing at 10. But Category 4 is heading towards the coastal bend.
We know that storms of this magnitude are life-changing events and can destroy wholesale communities, neighborhoods, and that's what that storm was capable of doing at that point.
I stayed through that evening. It was like 9 hours by a jet engine.
By 10 o'clock, phones are down, power's down. We're watching the screen and we're watching the just barrel on us, and it seemed like it just stuck right there where it was at.
Very simply, the Eyewall is like a 30-mile wide tornado. It is just a band of thunderstorm in kind of a donut shape that immediately surrounds the eye of the hurricane. The wind speed's 130 to 160, so that Eyewall is the real destructive force of this hurricane. It's where the maximum winds are located.
You know, when there was nothing to do, we would go hang out with some of the crews we had that were staging in our fire bay, and you would see the entire building. A fire bay is like a big I-beam sally port where all the trucks park, and this building was breathing. You would see it with the wind. I mean, we had 130, 140 mile an hour winds sustained for about 4 to 6 hours. So you would just see the building swell and then boom, and it would look like it would shake and slam. So it was pretty intense. And then my bedtime arrived. It was my time to finally go to sleep. You can imagine I didn't sleep.
I remember being on Facebook. I still had connection. And I was just following the storm chasers. And I remember at one point in the night, they drove out in the eye of the storm and they started panning just right and left. And all I could see was the destruction in my hometown.
I think finally fell asleep like 3 in the morning, you know, finally just couldn't take it anymore watching it. Is it a replay? Is it fresh? What's going on?
I knew that when darkness was going to lift, we'd see what really happened to the community.
In the morning, we got up at 8, and I asked my uncle if he could drive us out to Rockport to assess the damage of the home. And I honestly thought that we were going to come back to our home, and maybe there would be some damage, but we would have a home to come back to. And I first passed by the 2-story house that I grew up in, and I'm just like crying and screaming. And then I get to the house that we were living in, and I remember I pulled out my key to unlock the door, but there was no point in unlocking it, like the door was busted out. And I just went inside, and there was about 3 feet of debris, and all of our stuff was just covered in insulation and plywood and sheetrock. And I remember it was so quiet, in the town. Like I could hear like alarms going off from the houses, I guess. It was so quiet, and I just fell to my knees and I started crying and screaming.
A couple people posted videos that first like daybreak, and seeing it through a phone or through a TV, it didn't have the same feeling as when you're driving through and you see your town just white, you see trees, but then you see the first responders that look completely shooken up.
You know, I had seen a glance of one of my hotels on social media that somebody had put on there, so I knew there was something wrong there, but I couldn't. It was like they were driving by, but I was taking the picture like a millisecond earlier, so I could have caught the hotel. And so I was just like, so I was still waiting to see what happened there. We started driving into Port A, and then you start getting a real idea of sorry.
I didn't have a word. I felt like everything that we'd built up, everything that we'd created in this community, this beautiful community, it's all gone. We had no 911, no phone calls, no internet, nothing. We didn't know what the needs were of our community, and we were totally in a position of helplessness.
That particular weekend, I drove through Port Aransas, Corpus Christi, Aransas Pass, and I even went into Rockport, where you could smell gas in the air. But the most surprising thing to me was not the destruction, not the negative of the storm. It was what Harvey created. When Hurricane Harvey hit, I saw unity and togetherness come through.
The outpouring of love and the resiliency of our town, the surrounding communities, I didn't feel so afraid. I had felt a lot of emotions because I thought I was going to be taking this on my own, but it was clear that I wasn't in it alone.
And just traveling the areas, assessing the damage after the storm, and going there weeks later, observing the cleanup and the recovery, and working with our local partners in these communities. I think it's really amazing to see how the communities have come together as much as they have to help each other.
We had people come into our service center wanting to bring food, stopping the guys on the road. And like the one guy told me, he says, I can't work because people can bring me food all day long, and as one guy said, there's a guy from OG&E, one of the companies that were helping us. I was too embarrassed to tell him I can't eat. I took the food, and these contract workers, they go to storms all over. When they finished up here, they took off to Florida. And every one of them to a T said they have never seen the hospitality. And they said it must be a South Texas thing because they just couldn't believe it.
A&M Kingsville, the basketball team, they came, those big tall guys, and gutted my entire house in 3 hours. And I remember they were just so happy to be there. They shook my dad's hand and he was so happy, and I think he felt comfort. And they were complete strangers.
Well, oddly enough, everybody, the storm's coming, and everybody, the different cities in the coastal Bend region, they're all getting ready. So McAllen had preparations in place too. So they had a crew ready, dedicated. If something happened, boom, they could hit the ground running. Well, they were blessed by the storm not going there. However, they saw that when it did come, that the need was here, and immediately they moved the sources here, and the quality of people that came. We're talking the police officers, the firefighters, the city employees that came. They didn't ask for anything. They brought in their own generators, their own food, their own kitchens, their own everything. They simply needed a space, a pad. We set them up, and they hit the ground running.
You got to get the businesses back up, right? You have to. I mean, I have four of the 10 hotels that we have right now are closed, basically. And so I know I've got to get those back up. 95% of our businesses are impacted, destroyed. 25% of them are trying to make it back before the end of this year. Now think about that, 25%. And so how does the livelihood of the residents and the businesses and everything work together? It's going to take an outside effort.
Yeah, tourism is Port Aransas. That is our main source of income, because that is going to be the number one thing to keep Port Aransas going is for people to come, not when it's perfect, not when everything is perfect, but to start coming in. We have places that are available to rent right now. There are houses, there's motels that are up and going. We need people to still come down and visit our beaches, eat at our restaurants, fish in our seas. That is how Port Aransas is going to recover.
The barn blew apart, completely collapsed. There's nothing left of the barn. But by some miracle, it collapsed in a way that it fell all around the animals, but still kept them trapped inside. And if a beam had moved 12 inches in a different direction, none of them would have made it. The most important lesson or element for our family is we built our farm on the rock of our faith. Our faith is what drives everything that we do. And our faith in God is the basis of our farm, our family, and our life. Nothing will destroy that. We are not trying to recreate what we have. We are creating a new vision. We have to forget what was, create what it can be. And that's what we're trying to do.
Nobody in town was going to allow something like Harvey to keep us down or define us and our future. We were going to redefine our future. I think we're going to be more beautiful than we were before the storm. I think we're going to be better. Some of those folks feel like now I can go through Harvey and I can come out on top again.
And what everybody's got to remember is the storm started with us, not Houston. So I'm looking at this coastal community saying, don't forget us.
Hurricanes do happen. We live in hurricane country. Statistics produced by the National Hurricane Center show that a major hurricane hits the mid-Texas coast about every 30 to 40 years. We had a storm. Are we done for another 50 years? We can't say that. We have to be ready and vigilant and prepared really every season because it could happen again. Let's hope it doesn't. And the more you do to prepare, the more quickly you can get your life back and going again, after the storm.